my name's Katie and welcome to my channel. In this video I'm going to show you the evolution of my 6-foot African Cichlid tank. I've got a mixed species tank of Lake Malawi cichlids in there that I've grown out since they were little tiny juvenile fish. So I noticed that on YouTube you do see a lot of fish tanks where the fish are already fully grown and really colourful and beautiful, but you often don't see where they actually start from. I guess for people who buy adults and they really know what they want and they've been doing this a long time, they can probably buy the bigger ones and they're willing to spend the money and put them straight in the tank. But for a lot of people who are just getting into African cichlids, you probably don't want to spend that much money, and you probably also don't really know the type of species and stuff that you really want in your tank from the get-go. So you're more likely to probably go to your local fish store and buy some little tiny silver kind of mixed African cichlids that you don't really know their gender and stuff, and pop them in the tank and grow them out, which is exactly what I did. So I want to show you what my fish were like at the very beginning and talk a little bit about my experience keeping them, and also why I chose African cichlids and this tank in particular. If you're enjoying my content, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel and give this video a like if you find it helpful, and let me know what you think in the comments down below. Alright, let's get into it. So to give you a little bit of context in terms of why I chose African cichlids, I thought I'll go back to the very beginning of my first experience with them. So my first experience with African cichlids was with Mbuna. I was only 10 years old and my older brother, for his 18th birthday, got an Aqua 1 fish tank, and the fish that he chose to keep in there were African cichlids. What ended up happening was I took more interest in the fish tank than he actually did, and he would pay me $10 every 2 weeks to clean the tank for him. And I really loved these fish, but unfortunately the fish tank just wasn't big enough, and as they grew up they started to kill each other off, and we ended up getting rid of the remaining ones. And then that fish tank went away for a little while, and I went kind of on my own stint as a 10-11-year-old, keeping things like mollies and guppies and stuff in a tiny little fish tank, but I had no idea what I was doing. So it didn't go so well. I think I kept some fighting fish and stuff like that. And then throughout my teen years, I actually went more towards the monster fish realm. So I got really into Oscars, things like green terrors. I really wanted a Saratoga at one point as well. That was kind of like my dream fish. But then what happened was there's only so many big fish that you can fit in a 6-foot tank, and that was my limit for my bedroom at the time. It was 6-foot tank. So I ended up selling that eventually and selling my fish as well. And then I went into kind of smaller tanks because at the time I wasn't very sophisticated in my fish keeping, and I was using buckets and stuff like that to do water changes, and I thought that was kind of the only way because I didn't have anyone, you know, to show me the way forward kind of thing, and back then YouTube and stuff wasn't really so much of a thing. So I was under the impression that maybe a small fish tank was for me because it would be a bit easier to look after. So I went into the realm more of, I think it was guppies first, and then I had some ram cichlids too that I really loved. Would definitely keep them again. Really great fish. Then after that, I went back to African cichlids shortly, just for a little bit, but I got peacock cichlids, and not knowing the difference between Mbuna and peacocks, and having only peacock cichlids just wasn't really my thing. I had little juvenile ones and I wasn't that interested in them, so I ended up selling that fish tank to someone on Gumtree, and they took the fish and everything too. I had a few stints here and there with saltwater as well, but it was never something that really stuck for me. The reason being is that I like simplicity, and if I'm not interested, like really interested in something, then I'm just not going to learn about it. I tried corals as well, but I'm not really a plant person, so I'm also not really a coral person. So I ended up steering away from that, and then the next thing that I kept would have been then I went more to South American species again and planted tanks for a little bit. So I tried CO2 for a bit. I didn't really find that it was my thing. I kept discus, and I really loved keeping discus. I liked the simplicity of a bare bottom tank and just having easy to keep plants like anubias and driftwood and stuff throughout the tank. However, I found that it was just a bit defeating because I wouldn't buy them really big. I would get them little and grow them out, and then to lose one after having them for so long and going on such a journey where you're really looking after the water parameters and stuff all the time and doing everything you can. Sometimes with discus, no matter what you do, you will just end up naturally losing them, and they take a long time to grow. They're pretty finicky and they're very expensive when they're big. So losing a discus is a huge loss. And I found that the stress then that was causing me and how upset it was making me if I did lose my discus, it just wasn't quite worth it. It ended up kind of taking the enjoyment out of it for me. Similar to what I found when I kept the CO2 set up, I found that having to do so much maintenance and stuff and having things thriving and then having a problem and stuff, I wasn't so much of a person who likes to tackle things all of the time. I kind of like to just be able to leave something and just enjoy it for what it is. So I thought, okay, what fish can I get that is relatively hardy, something that does well in an aquarium system, and something that doesn't need things like plants in there, that they actually will thrive and enjoy just having a fish tank that has only rocks in it or only driftwood. And then with discus not being the answer to that, I kind of went, hey, maybe I'll try African cichlids again, since I really enjoyed having them in the past, and they don't need plants. In fact, they kind of just destroy plants. They're perfectly happy with rocks and caves. They are a medium kind of sized fish, so I can get lots of them as well. I'm not going to have that issue that I had with monster fish, where you start to overcrowd the tank pretty quickly and you can't add lots of different types of fish. It kind of really limits you. And I thought with African cichlids, although I am limited to African cichlids themselves, there's so many different types of subspecies and stuff in Lake Malawi, and so many different types of colours and stuff and varieties that you can get, that I thought that's the answer, that's going to be the perfect fish. And I was right. I've really enjoyed having this setup. I found it to be super enjoyable. Throughout my time keeping all of those other types of fish, I was always just using second-hand tanks. So I had my brother's tank, but then the other ones that I would buy were just ones from Gumtree. So things that were, $200, $300, $400, not really going beyond that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with second-hand tanks. I think they're wonderful and it's great, and you can get them at a really good price. But growing up, I just always really wanted to have something that was new, that I had known everything that had happened to the tank and its whole history. And something I really loved when I was more into planted tanks was those beautiful rimless aquariums. And the reason that they use rimless aquariums a lot for planted tanks is, so you can really get in there, and that you can put like large logs and stuff in there and do aquascaping and stuff. But I thought, if I'm going to keep African cichlids and I want to have huge like holy rock and stuff in there, then a rimless tank would look beautiful, but it would also be practical as well in terms of being able to get the huge cave systems and rocks and stuff in there. And then it also leaves things open for in the future if there's anything else that I want to do with it or put in there. You can have stuff jutting out and everything from the tank. Although I probably wouldn't do that with African cichlids because they need their lids on top of the tank. But I thought, oh my gosh, if I could get a rimless tank, and I'd finished uni by this point as well, so I actually had some income for once. I thought if I could save up for something that's going to kind of be like a centerpiece, and it's the thing that's going to be really incredible is the fish in the tank. They'll be the main thing, but then the tank itself as well. And so for a long time, the tank itself was the kind of centerpiece, because I did get a bit of flack from people not being able to see the fish, because my African cichlids were so tiny when I first got them that you literally, if you were standing 3 meters away, you probably wouldn't be able to see them, or you'd need some really good glasses to be able to see them in the tank. I got really good feedback from people saying that they really liked the look of it with the lights and stuff. And I mean, not taking credit for this type of setup at all. I mean, it's been something that people have been doing for a long time, but more so like in planted setups, having the rimless look with the lights that are kind of above it, like the pendant lights. But I guess it was something that wasn't as common with African cichlids. So people really liked the setup and stuff. So I gained some confidence and I started sharing it more since people were enjoying it. And my fish were never really the main thing that I was sharing. It was more just like the scape itself. When I say scape, I mean just kind of the cave systems of Holy Rock, and then the actual beautiful water box tank itself. But then over time, what happened was my African cichlids started to actually grow up and get really colourful and really beautiful. And now they're kind of, I think, the main centerpiece of the tank. And it's been hugely rewarding to go on that journey and start from having these really basic, tiny little fish that you could barely even see, to seeing them actually mature. And they're not even fully grown yet, but actually growing up and showing more colour and showing their potential as well. I even had them breed at one point, and I've got a little baby fish that is growing up that's probably around the size actually of when I first got all of my fish. So that one's getting a little bit bigger now, which has been really cool to see. In terms of choosing my stocking for fish that I have, I just did research online and kind of got to the point where I understood that, all right, I'm not going to mix different species from different lakes together. I'll stick with Lake Malawi. I've got to watch that I don't have aggression issues by having too many dominant kind of males or too many species that are the same colour or look the same. And I'm not going to get, ones that grow really huge, like the eye-biter cichlids and stuff like that. I want ones that are on the more moderate, aggressive side. And I'm going to try and stay away from the kind of more prey, carnivore kind of cichlids as much as possible. I mean, I do have some haps in there, but they're kind of ones that are more on the peaceful side, like the giraffe cichlid. So, and then, when I went into the shop, I just kind of asked the people at the store and stuff for what their thoughts were. I would literally just go around to each tank and Google the name of the fish that was on there and read a little bit about it while I was there and, write down the name and then decide on all of the ones that I wanted. And then I added, I think it was like 20 or something like that in one big stint, and let them all kind of settle in. Sorry, actually, I added 5. Just while the tank was still kind of cycling a little bit, just to help it get it going. They all did fine and everything, and then a week later I added a bunch more because I could see that the tank, the bacteria was handling the bioload and stuff in there. So I really went in deep straight away. And then over time, probably the 3 months after that, I maybe went to the shops a few times and would see a couple of kind of cool ones and then just buy those and add them in. But I haven't had any new additions for at least half a year now. The varieties that I found to not do so well that I will stay away from in the future are ones that are more the kind of albino varieties. I just find that they tended to just be a little bit weaker and didn't fend as well, and it seemed like some of them had some issues with eyesight and stuff as well. So I wouldn't recommend just personally getting albino varieties of any type. And so I didn't know genders, I just got all of them and hoped for the best and decided that I'll see what happens as they grow up. My plan was if I had any huge issues that I would be able to give fish back to the pet store as well, and then let things kind of settle down and then maybe add some more in and go to and fro. Now that I have larger African cichlids, I wouldn't buy tiny ones again. So I would either wait for the pet store to get someone else's African cichlids in from a tank that they've closed down and they don't want anymore. But I would have a look at places that sell, the more medium to fully grown African cichlids and just pay more for those ones and quarantine them and then add, 1 or 2 bigger ones to the tank that are around the same size as the ones that I've got right now. I totally recommend 6-foot tanks. I think that that's out of all of the tanks that I've kept, and I've kept so many different sizes of tanks, I just think that this is the size that I always go back to. I was originally going to get this in the 5-foot because it was so expensive, but then because it got delayed with shipping and stuff, I just decided to take the plunge and go for a 6-foot, and I am so glad that I did, because I just find that extra foot makes a huge difference. I mean, it adds so much water volume, but then just for the actual aesthetic and space of the tank and how much swimming room and stuff the fish have, if you have the space and the money to go for a 6-foot, I definitely think that that's the one to just start with. I think sometimes people might think that having a bigger tank is going to cause them more kind of maintenance, but I found that it's actually the opposite, because the water parameters tend to be more stable when you've got a larger volume of water. And if you've just got the right supplies, like having a pump and a hose to refill it, then it's really no issue doing water changes on a big tank at all. And it just gives you so many more opportunities for how many fish that you can have, types of fish that you can have. You know, if you ever want to change your type of fish in the future, even if you keep little fish, it looks incredible as well. Like when someone gets a huge tank and they've got it full of like neon tetras or something like that, where you can get like a really big school. So definitely an advocate for 6-foot tanks if you're looking at starting out. I think don't be afraid or intimidated by the size of it. It's actually just going to make your life easier if you've got the space for it, and the water bill, the money for the water bill as well. And so I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea of how this tank came to be and why I chose having this type of tank and chose African cichlids, and why I was so sure about what I wanted as well, and why I kind of dove into the deep end pretty quickly. Because this tank has been exactly what I've wanted it to be. So it's something that is easy maintenance. It stays nice throughout the week. I don't have to worry about anything. The fish in there are hardy. I never have to stress about their health and what's going on. And they're also really beautiful fish that, although when you get them they might start small and not that interesting, it's really rewarding being able to watch them grow, which has been one of the awesome things about actually filming a lot of this journey and having so many photos and stuff, because I think without that, I may not have even noticed the evolution as much as what I have now, but because I've got so much stuff that's available that I can see that contrast of where things actually started out versus where they are now, which is really cool and really rewarding to see. But I hope this video gave you a little bit of an idea of what to expect and what your tank might look like at the start if you do go out and buy some baby African cichlids, and then shown you as well what can happen in 10 months time with their evolution and how your tank can look once those little babies start to actually grow up. So if you're enjoying my content or you liked this video, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel and follow me even further on this journey as well. If you've got any questions, put them down in the comments below, and I would love to see you in the next video. Bye.